The phone line just clears itself up, and we'll try exactly that. You want me to take another one while we're waiting for Robert to rejoin? No, we should be able to do that quickly enough. Based on the call from Pam, a couple of obvious things need to happen here in the province, and maybe Health Canada has to adjust their safe level targets as well, because if we're not testing for everything that might indeed have a negative health impact, then there's a question that is why we're doing that. And on top of it, not only upping our testing regime and the numbers of things we're testing for, but then some mechanisms that can be employed to ensure that residents are told exactly what's going on with their water supply. So it's just too important an issue to just, say, okay, well, Health Canada says we only need to test for this and test for that, and the levels are that, and if we're inside it, we're fine. But obviously, that might not be the case. So getting out in front of it, and for Health Canada, I suppose that's where it starts, need to revisit the safe level targets that they've set forward, and then for provinces and municipalities, some by legislation requirements for full examination of the test results, and to tell the folks where you live exactly what the results were. Apparently there's been some communities where kind of maybe sitting on some results, and maybe, just maybe, what we're doing is having a negative impact on people's health. So that can't be good enough. Let's go to line number 3, see if Robert's there. Robert, you're on the air.
Morning, Patty. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. I just wanted to call in today and just bring up the deadline for the comments for the environmental assessment that was registered by EVREC out here in Exploits.
Sure.
The deadline for that is November 11th. Yep. So it's available to see for people online. If anybody's gone through it, they'll see how, I'll say vacant it is. It doesn't really have much information. It's pretty bare, minimal. And a lot of the information they have in there regarding public consultation and involvement is just, in my opinion, straight out lies. So just wanted to make sure that everybody who has concerns about this development in Exploits area takes the time to at least submit a comment, any topic at all. There's literally hundreds of things you can pick out of that EA to say that it hasn't been done properly.
So you say that it's pretty vague, the document that you have. Give us an idea of what it looks like, what it says, because I haven't looked. I probably should have.
Well, that document, it's a registration, and it's all just basically just it's just saying that what they're planning to do. So, for example, their wildlife studies, they say that they tracked wildlife, migratory birds, and to read it, they sat down in one location for 15 minutes and saw one goose or one geese or duck or something, and then moved on and just marked down that there was only one geese or goose in their study. So, I mean, I could see 10 geese from my window anytime. So those studies of me aren't accurate at all if you're sitting in one location for 15 minutes and trying to get an idea of what the wildlife there is. And as well, where they have the Met Tower location in Crow Valley up by New Bay Lake, when they had the land cleared there first before just grubbed off, like I went up and had a look at it, and you could see the bear tracks and moose tracks all over the place. And they don't have any, they just keep saying that they're going to monitor and they're going to see this stuff, but they don't have any studies. They have no idea what's going on. And the public consultation with the Indigenous groups, it's if you've seen any of the posts online, is very misleading, because EVREC is saying that they did all this consultation with the Indigenous groups, but the truth comes out, and they've only been talking to the business arm of the Halapu Holdings Company. And the Central Exploits Group hasn't been contacted by them at all, and they haven't reached out to Sputnik. I'm sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. They haven't reached out to them at all. So it seems like these guys, EVREC, they really don't have a clue what they're doing. The more I look into this, it seems like that they're just the face men. So from the A-team, like the promoter sort of thing, they're the ones just trying to push this through for somebody else. So I wouldn't be surprised at all in the next little while if you see EVREC change hands or be sold over to somebody else who has a better public perception, because Ravi and James right now have a very, very poor public perception out here. And I think that you're going to see whoever is behind pushing this development, they're going to switch those guys out for somebody else to try and get better public perception.
public perception is an interesting concept, isn't it, Robert? Because when we talk about developments, whether it be onshore wind, hydrogen, ammonia, export to wherever the market may be, and or oil developments, and maybe more specifically forestry licenses and mines, the concept of social license, which is about public perception by and large. So if people don't think they've been heard or getting answers to the questions that they pose, then how do politicians who are eventually going to be in charge of releasing these proponents from environmental impact assessments and for final green lights for eventual development, if it ever comes to pass, how do they even factor in social license? That's something that I really don't know if anybody has a firm grasp on.
Well, the thing is, I guess it's is it just lip service, or is it something that they actually do care about? Because social license, if you want to get the public's perception, basically the government should enact engage the Engage NL platform in order to get the public's perception. Then they can have registered and you can sign up for an area that you're in because you're all, as a Newfoundland residents, we're in the system already. As well, they could have local meetings and have plebiscites. And right now, the local community is here. When the residents are asking for plebiscites and asking our voices to be heard, we're being ignored. We're being told no. We're asking to meet with our council to talk about our concerns, and we're being told no. We don't want to meet with you in the next, or right now, or in the next little while. So it's pretty disheartening when you hear about social license and they're only here because the people want them here. But then when people say they don't want them here, and you try to get representation and equal some respect, basically, and have your voice heard, and we're being minimalized or rejected, and we don't get to have our voices heard.
Yeah, and then I would wonder even what social license means insofar as percentage of the population in support of or opposed to. So are we talking 50% plus one kind of stuff like we do in elections? Is that a plebiscite result that would pass muster? And in addition to that, with these types of issues, these types of proposed developments, they're pretty complicated. And there's a lot of technological issues that are way over my head. There's all sorts of maybe not purposeful disinformation, but some misinformation that might be in favor of or in opposition to, that also leads for people to vote one way or the other. So, would I be able to cast an informed vote today on a wind project? Maybe. Would the majority of people in one community or one region or another be able to? Maybe or maybe not. So I think that whole catchphrase of social license is very murky.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. Like, this is a very complicated process and a very, very in-depth proposal, which takes a lot of risk and a very large amount of assumptions. But even with taking those large assumptions and the big risks, like the financial side of it, like I'm an electrical engineering technologist. I've got experience with electrical facilities and generation, transmission, distribution, controls, automation, the gamut of it, basically. And then my wife is a financial advisor, so she doesn't really understand the business case of it all. It seems to me like the only business case that there is for these promoters and hype men or face men, like I've called them before, to come in and talk about how much they're going to do good and then sell it off to somebody else who doesn't have to follow the same rules as the first company. And again, with EVREC, the initial contact with the government was made by a consortium between HydroStore and Jade Power. So now neither one of those companies are involved in it, but yet we still got this EVREC proposal that isn't connected to anybody who made the initial contact and application, except for Ravi Sud and James Calderidi and the other guy, Dean Command.
I don't know what the business case looks like anyway, and I don't know how far down the road any of these proponents have gone regarding raising capital, because a few things. The feds haven't clearly defined what green means to them. There's a long way between a 15% and a 40% tax subsidy, and if I'm Goldman Sachs, I'm not even entertaining a meeting unless you have all your ducks in a row about what the business model actually looks like. In addition to that, the federal government has completely lowered their forecast in the value of the market, period, by mid-century, from 12 trillion to under 2 trillion. In addition to that, even the Germans themselves, who are the ones that we talk about all the time because of the MOUs in place, and they've said publicly about weaning themselves off natural gas and a further reliance on green hydrogen, yet they haven't even built the infrastructure for offload. So we got a supply and demand mismatch at this moment in time. If the Germans were as bullish as they say they are, why haven't we seen any of these 10-year power purchase agreements being signed? Why? Because no one's got any money as of yet, as far as I can tell.
Well, not just that, the price of it too would be
Exactly.
so astronomically high. So, like, for example, I sent you an email a while ago. It's just it talked about Germany as an example using wind to decarbonize their grid, and I mean. They spent, I can't remember the exact numbers, but if they, instead of decommissioning their natural gas plants and decommissioning their nuclear plants and not going with the wind turbines, they could have saved, I believe it was $600 billion, and they could have reduced their carbon emissions by over 75% more if they went to nuclear instead of wind. So, like, that's a great example right there. And again, the lower cost and the stability and the reliability of the nuclear industry is so night and day over the wind industry. I can't even explain it in proper words for people to understand.
Yeah, well, wind is intermittent versus the reliable, consistent output of nuclear, number one. And again, don't take it from me, take it from the Germans. They set aside 1.2 billion euro to offset the price, the eventual price of green hydrogen for their residents. So there's a lot of unknowns still out there, from environmental through business model, through every step of the way in these proposals. And that's not even giving it a thumbs up or thumbs down. That's just stating the blatantly obvious. Robert, anything else quickly before I have to go?
Yeah, well, I just want to mention that this is Bat Week as well. So the last week of October is Bat Week, and it's important to think about our little furry flying friends. And if we have thousands of wind turbines installed in our province, then I don't think you're going to see nearly as many bats around in the future, which, again, is going to cause an environmental impact that people just don't seem to be realized or cognizant of. So I just want to put that out there. People need to be aware of the risks and the dangers and the hazards that are coming towards our province and the people and our way of life and our culture that is being pushed down our throats by this government.
Bats are in the pollination world. For sure, they're in the pest control world, so this saves the agricultural industry billions of dollars a year in North America, and that's the presence of bats. So, fair enough. Robert, appreciate the time and the emails. Thanks for doing it.
No problem. You have a good day, Batty.
You too. Bye-bye.